If you want to advance in your career, knowing where you are and where you're going is essential. You need to work on your strategic development. In previous videos in this series, I outlined what being more strategic means. In this video, we'll look at the practical steps you can take to advance your career. We'll examine your current role in the company, and we'll look at how you can use the scope chart to aid in the planning of your next career move. Let's get started. This is the 8th video in my series on scope, the perspective of your role in the organization. We're looking at scope through the scope chart that I introduced in the first video in this series. If you need a refresher or you missed that first video, you might want to start there. I carefully talk about planning your next career move because you shouldn't try to have an entire career map planned out. Life rarely works like that. It's certainly worthwhile to have a long-term goal, such as, I'd like to be a VP someday, or my goal is to be the CEO. Everyone needs aspiration and distant horizons to aim for. But trying to build a map to that outcome is frustrating and futile. I've known people with a detailed plan. They'll say, first I'll be a manager for 2 years, get promoted to director where I'll spend 3 years, and then 2 as a VP, and then on to the C-suite. Those plans are folly. The timing never works out as you hoped. Sometimes you'll get recognized early and a promotion will come faster than you expected. Other times you'll struggle at some level. Some project you lead will go sideways and your timeline will be delayed. Or the company will go through something and reorg you somewhere unexpected. Any number of things will conspire to derail your timing. If you've built a careful map, you might find yourself disappointed, saddened that you missed some milestone, even though the progress you've made has been objectively wonderful. You should be proud of your accomplishments to date. Even more likely, however, is that your plans will change. You'll find some area that's fascinating where you want to spend more time, or some project over here is calling to you. But to do it delays your careful plan. Or you'll wake up one day and realize the whole idea of being a CEO is just not you. You want to be a superstar in one field, not the wrangler of a highly complex organization. Here again, it would be a shame if you let your careful plan provide even the slightest disappointment. You need to celebrate whatever path you take and when you take it. So don't plan your life, just take it one step at a time. Relish each step and look to the one beyond. Make the journey all it can be. Enough with the long-term view. Let's look at where you are today. Before you look at your next step, you should be sure you've exhausted the current role. You should prove to yourself, your manager, and other leaders that you've mastered that role, that you've seen and appreciate all its nuances. More importantly, you should milk the current role for all the experience and skills it can afford you. Moving up too quickly will just make each next move that much more difficult. How do you milk your current role? First, through some careful self-assessment using the scope chart and some of the lessons we've discussed so far. Ask yourself some clear questions. First is to examine if you're taking a balanced view, looking up and down in appropriate measure. Does my circle on the scope chart overlap in a balanced way, up and down? Am I too focused on climbing the ladder, paying too much attention to my own next step? Listening uncritically to those above me, looking up at the expense of all other things. Is my bubble almost entirely filled from above? Focusing too much attention up colors your perspective both around and below you. You don't work effectively enough with your peers. You overlook your team's needs and perspectives. You become a corporate vessel, not an independent thinker. In addition, too much time looking up risks looking desperate and needy, even like a sycophant or a suck-up. More often than not, I've seen the people who get promoted aren't actively campaigning for it. They're just too busy killing it with their own team to notice that. At the very least, they aren't relentlessly hounding their manager to fulfill the promotion checklist at each one-on-one. Speaking of team, you should ask yourself if you're paying enough attention to the team you manage. Are they getting the resources, attention, and recognition they deserve, both as a team and as individuals? Ask yourself, have I spent enough time mentoring and growing my team? Is the bubble sufficiently filled with attention to the team below me? Senior leaders love managers who build a solid team, a team that is efficient, well-run, and confident in their execution. And they want to reward leaders who develop future leaders, who have the future in mind. This demonstrates some element of strategic thinking on both axes. You're thinking about the organization and the future. Another huge concern of leadership is who will fill your role. Many people get locked into their role simply because there's no alternative, no one to take their place. You need to work on ensuring that there's a fertile path of growth for people on your team, that you've worked to assist one or more people to potentially fill your spot. You do that through thoughtful one-on-one time, explicit career conversations, and overt development work with your team. Share your experience with a few of the most promising members on the team. Bring them along on your own journey and make sure they get recognition from those above and around you. If you've spent enough time facing down and publicly recognizing your team, your leadership will see your replacement just as clearly as you do. The goal of this self-assessment is to make sure that your bubble is balanced, that you're doing all you can to have a healthy perspective up and down. If you have a good balance, it's time to look around. But beyond your own self-reflection, you should be looking sideways. I outlined this in the previous video on being more strategic. Being a great team player at your own level is a way to demonstrate your mastery of that level. But how can you do that? How do you find ways to work with your peers? By finding common objectives and working with your peers toward those objectives. You can do that inside your own discipline or out, on formal sanctioned projects or on ad hoc efforts you instigate yourself. Let's look at them all. First, let's look at projects you can instigate yourself, projects that give you a chance to demonstrate your strategic abilities. Those rely on your ability to identify common ground. Inside your own discipline, look at your peers. If you're a leader of a product team, look to other peer product team leaders. What are the common pain points you see? What are common areas where you all get pressure from above but find it difficult to get traction on? What are the clumsy processes you all suffer through? Where is there friction among and between you all? If you can find those common points, you can try to envision a better path and gather your peers to sell your ideas. Even if you don't have a solution, bring them together to discuss the problem. Explore solutions. Come up with a plan amongst yourselves. Then either sell that up the chain, or if you want to really be bold, just work on executing it amongst each other. In any case, solving problems, especially without the direction from your manager, is the kind of self-leadership that demonstrates mastery, demonstrates strategic thinking. If you're widely seen as a person who sparked the move, you look like a leader. You can even do this outside your own discipline, across functional groups, bringing together product people, sales and marketing people, finance people, HR people, and so on. This kind of work is much harder, but it can be done. You need to find the common problem, the common pain point, the shared objective, and then gather an ad hoc group to try to address it. This kind of work is challenging because you need two things that are hard to get. One, you need the perspective to even see the common issues across the functions. And two, you need the buy-in from people not in your discipline who may not see the problem the way you do. But if you can do this and pull off even small progress on a widespread issue, you look like a superstar to your leadership. The kinds of things I've seen people work on like this are corporate-wide pain points. Some examples are recruiting and hiring challenges, cultural issues across the company, and process problems that affect everyone. If you can be seen as a person who spots problems, takes initiative to understand the problem in detail, and moves to address them, you look great. If you can actually make progress on them, you are a star. If none of those things seem clear to you, that's okay. There are almost always more formal ways to gain visibility and demonstrate your mastery of the level you're in. First, look around for every opportunity. Perhaps it's a chance to hone your public speaking skills. There are always opportunities to speak to groups in the company. Maybe it's presentations for new hires, small introductory greetings to customers, lunchtime learning sessions, and so on. These opportunities often go unfilled. They're desperate for volunteers. These are a good way to polish your skills and get seen by a broader cross-section of the company. Virtually every company I've seen has initiatives that are neglected. They have announced aspirational projects or goals without any clear way of solving them. They've created a committee to tackle this broad issue or that, and they get no takers. These lie fallow, just waiting for someone to pick them up. Yes, this is often thankless work that gets little accomplished, but these are often very strategic projects with broad view across the company or over a long period of time. By participating, you'll be seen as someone who understands this kind of strategic issue. At the very least, if you participate, you'll be seen as a team player. You might show up on the radar screens of leaders you might otherwise not have access to. And sometimes, just sometimes, these efforts make great progress, and being a part of it is a boost to your career. In short, look around to do things that gain you visibility. Signing up for things that otherwise go unfilled while still excelling at your current job is a great way to say, "I got this," to demonstrate mastery at your current level. Once you've clearly shown you have your job under control and have milked all the opportunities for visibility around you, it's time to start looking up. You can do that with the help of the scope chart. It's important to take your manager's perspective when looking up. To promote you to the next level is a risk. They don't know for certain that you can handle the job. They'd like to promote you, but would love to see some evidence that you'll be okay. They want to see that you understand the change in scope you're about to experience. You can help them by doing everything you can to demonstrate it on both axes of the scope chart. Look at the two axes and the space just above your current role. Not way out to the whole company or decades into the future, just that small window right next to your current role. What challenges are there in that immediate area? On the organizational axis is where working sideways in your role gets you familiar with broader company issues. If you've done that, you've gone a long way to reassure your manager that you can think outside of your own box. Now it's time to think up to the next level. If you're a director who's comfortable with division-wide thinking, start thinking company-wide. Start trying to understand the kinds of issues that cross divisions. Look at the gaps between divisions and find the bridges. Here again, you don't need to have the solutions. People above you struggle with these things all the time, but it helps immensely if you can demonstrate that you understand the problem. Your manager will be greatly comforted that you at least see the problem. Having a clue is worth almost as much as having a solution. How do you identify those issues? One way is to look to your direct manager and see what kind of issues they're facing. You don't need to read their email or performance review to understand their problems. You just need to keep an open ear. What are the issues they struggle with? Who are the peers they have conflict with? What company-wide initiatives can they never find the time for? Watch what they're working on and struggling with to get a clue as to the kind of issues in their role. Then try to understand why these are hard, what the sticking points are, and who the players are, and so on. Once again, it's not about you coming up with the magical solution to these issues. It's just that you see them and understand them. That alone will tell your leadership that, at least to some degree, taking a chance on you at that next level will be less risky. You won't be completely lost. On the time axis, it's often easier to see a way to demonstrate your ability to look beyond your current role. Almost all companies have a budgeting process, a process that is painful and dreaded by all. But this is, by definition, a look out on the time axis, and it's a chance for you to show your acuity at dealing with things beyond your current role. If you're a line manager, participate in the budget process. Show that you understand the value of the process and can think beyond your immediate time period. If you're a director and comfortable with this year and next, find the strategic planning process and find a way to participate. To show that you can think in multi-year spans. Maybe just as an observer, but if possible as a participant. Yes, all these planning meetings are painful. Yes, it can make you want to stab yourself in the eye after the third hour. But they're an essential part of planning for the organization. Your willingness to step up alone speaks volumes to leadership. And once again, you don't have to be a visionary. You don't have to have remarkable insights into your industry decades into the future. You just have to show that you're comfortable with these kinds of processes and that you're familiar with spreadsheets that lay out the future, that you're not afraid of the squishiness that this planning involves. That again tells your manager that taking a chance on you at the next level is less risky. You will not be overwhelmed from day one. When planning your next step, remember the scope chart. Remember that your goal is to not think in massive leaps, either in organization or in time. Your sights should be on the next step, on that small incremental window of the next job. You do that by demonstrating mastery at your current level, by being a leader among your peers and across your current level, and by doing what you can to show your manager that there's minimal risk if they promote you to the next level. And finally, if they do promote you, there's someone who can fill your existing role. If you do all of that, your path to the next step is clear. In the penultimate video in this series, we'll look at how your perspective can differ from others, how the scope chart can help you navigate those differences. But that's next time. Be sure to subscribe to my channel and click the bell so you won't miss each new video in this series. I'll see you next time in Scope Perception.